I'm not in the mood for your nonsense, so back off. I won't be handing this child over to someone like you. It was a chilly evening, and news of a severe cold wave had been reported. I was rushing home when I spotted my niece on the way. Something was off about her, no jacket, holding it in her arms. Upon closer inspection, I couldn't believe she was holding a baby. Both looked thin, and their clothes were dirty. Where do you think you're going with a baby in this cold? I couldn't ignore my trembling niece, offering to let her rest at my house. She snapped at me, "Shut up. Who would go to your house?" Despite our strained relationship, I couldn't overlook their condition. I tried to invite them with a gentle tone and smile, but she staunchly refused, citing her distrust. As I attempted to persuade her, a car suddenly pulled up, and to my surprise, my husband stepped out. "Well, it can't be helped. I'll have to take you with us by force." Swiftly, he picked up my niece and the baby, urging me to get in. I protested his forceful actions, feeling like he was kidnapping them. However, he drove on without saying a word. Upon reaching the destination, I was left speechless. I'm Kelly, born and raised in an ordinary family, a 29-year-old housewife married to a man. I have a sister who is 2 years older. Our relationship wasn't bad when we were kids, but things changed after her marriage to a wealthy man. She became extravagant, looking down on us and boasting about her luxurious lifestyle every chance she got. How sad that we can only afford an apartment, while she revels in her big, beautiful house, thanks to her $2 million spending. I came face to face with my sister, who never missed an opportunity to flaunt her shopping sprees and elevated status, and it grated on my nerves. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. "Enough already. I'm sick of hearing about your money obsession. I'm content with my life. Keep your opinions to yourself." My anger boiled, reaching the point where I felt like attacking her. But she just laughed it off, snorted, and casually said, "Oh, so you're jealous after all. How pitiful. Poor people's jealousy is really an ugly sight." Her nonchalant and contemptuous attitude fueled my deep-seated dislike for her. From that point on, her jabs only intensified. Even at family gatherings, she would maliciously put me and my husband down. "Is that all your husband makes?" "Nothing. I guess you must be a worthless old contractor, huh? Because of that, you have to work part-time jobs too. Poor you. By the way, I heard your wedding was really average, mostly just a room full of family members. If you compare it, my own wedding was exquisite, huh? A grand event for 100 people, a stunning gown, a breathtaking venue, and the food was first-rate. If only you could have hitched your ride on a gold mine like me." Her greed even led her to try to snatch away my necklace, a singular high-end item that was a beloved gift from my husband on my birthday. She couldn't stand the idea that a poor woman like me had such a nice thing. "How dare a poor girl like you carry a big fashion brand name? It doesn't suit you at all. Actually, it's kind of depressing how that lovely necklace is wasted on you. It would look way better on me, so you might as well give it up." Fortunately, the necklace wasn't taken, but its chain was snapped, leaving me quietly weeping for the love marred by this act of sadism. From then on, I did everything to outright ignore my sister. Avoiding her meant distancing from her family as well. However, my brother-in-law, always occupied with work, spared us no help in our little heartbreaks. Our interactions consisted of trivial comments and tongue bites. Despite his stoic exterior, I regretfully found myself reading him as well in the wretched limelight of my opulent sister. Additionally, Susan, my sister's 9-year-old daughter, seemed to have inherited a certain distaste for us. Dripping the sweet family ordeal with typical fashion disdain, every meeting with my niece was met with glares and minimal response. I couldn't fathom what I had done to earn her dislike. When I converse with my niece, the distance between us feels palpable. Although there isn't a particular issue, being treated so coldly by her adds a layer of loneliness. I've successfully severed ties with my sister and her family, but I still catch glimpses of my sister's activities through a neighbor who works part-time with me. News had recently reached me that my sister had welcomed her second child, and amidst the hectic life of parenting, She seemed to be happily indulging in her favorite brands. On what seemed like any other peaceful day, with no interactions with my sister, I encountered an unexpected incident. It was the dead of winter, and a severe cold wave was making headlines. Anticipating the snow, I headed to the nearby supermarket, walking briskly with my scarf covering up to my nose. During this cold day, I unexpectedly spotted my niece before she noticed me. Initially contemplating a quick exit, I couldn't ignore something odd about her. For some reason, she wasn't wearing her jacket but was cradling it in her arms. A closer look revealed she was holding a baby, both appearing thin and clad in dirty clothes. Her nose was bright red, and she walked carefully, clutching the jacket around the baby to shield it from the cold. Despite her apparent distress, she was shivering. Concerned, I called out to her, suggesting she come to my place to warm up. Startled by my voice, she jumped, and upon seeing me, she vehemently rejected the offer. "Shut up. Why would I go to someone like you?" Despite her strong rebuff, I couldn't overlook their condition under the cold sky. I persisted, urging her to warm up at my place briefly, promising to drive her home afterward. She continued to resist, adamant about protecting the child and insisting she wouldn't hand the baby over to a person like me. Despite assuring her of my intentions, she refused to listen, clinging to her distrust. As I grappled with how to help them, a car unexpectedly pulled up beside us. To my surprise, my husband stepped out. With a resigned tone, he declared, "Well, it can't be helped. I'll have to take you with us by force." Without delay, he picked up my niece and the baby, urging me to get into the car. As we drove away, he reassured my niece, "Just stay calm, and I won't do anything bad. Please don't thrash about." My niece, subdued by the sudden turn of events or perhaps my husband's stern demeanor, now behaved quietly, though she looked dangerously pale. In the car, my husband assured us he wouldn't do anything harmful as we rushed to the hospital, where a bewildered nurse took my niece and the baby, caught in the unexpected situation. In the waiting room, I couldn't contain my curiosity and concern as I asked my husband, "What's all this about? Why were you there just now, and why rush to the hospital?" My tone carried a slight protest, questioning the forceful actions that felt almost like a kidnapping. In response, he gave me a wry smile. He explained, "It was pure coincidence that I was there. Just happened to pass by on my way back from work. I was curious about what you and Susan were arguing about. But more than that, I noticed Susan and the baby's faces were very pale. I just thought I had to get them to a warm place right away." Initially thinking any warm place, like our home, would do, he was shocked by the unusual lightness when he picked up my niece and the baby. Sensing something more than just the cold, he changed the destination from our home to the hospital, where they could receive appropriate care. Although startled by the abrupt car ride, I realized that if my husband hadn't arrived when he did, and it was just me, I wouldn't have been able to do anything. Reflecting on it, I felt grateful for my husband's actions, even if they were a bit forceful. After my niece and the baby's examination, the doctor informed us that they were both suffering from malnutrition and were now receiving IV drips while resting in warm beds. Apart from malnutrition, there didn't seem to be any other abnormalities, providing us with some relief. However, the doctor, suspecting potential abuse due to the circumstances, had already called the police about 10 minutes after the IV was finished, and Susan woke up. Talking to Susan later in the hospital, she was no longer in a state of complete refusal and could converse normally. According to her, my sister was away on a trip with her friends, and my brother-in-law was on a business trip as usual. During my sister's absence, she had left all the care of the baby to Susan, instructing her to take care of it. However, without specific instructions, Susan had been imitating what she had seen her mom do. As the baby's condition worsened and started crying in distress, Susan decided to take the baby to the hospital, using her only jacket to wrap the baby despite the cold. During the journey, the realization hit me that had we not found Susan and the baby, they might have collapsed from the cold. The mere thought sent shivers down my spine. My husband, curious about Susan's earlier hostility, asked why she had been acting that way towards me, Susan, looking away awkwardly, revealed that she had been raised to believe a lie, that I was a bad person. This falsehood had been ingrained in her by her mother from a young age. According to Susan, my sister told her that I was bullied by her when I was young, labeling me as a bad person. "So you mustn't get close to her," my sister warned her. For a child, a mother's words are everything, and without verifying the truth, Susan had always perceived me as the enemy who bullied her mom. However, witnessing our genuine efforts to help, Susan began to question her mother's narrative. "Is what Mommy said true? Did you bully Mom?" Susan asked me with direct eyes. I shook my head and explained that my sister and I got along when we were kids. Tearfully, Susan apologized for being so defiant and hating us all this time because of the lies she believed. Understanding the reason behind Susan's long-standing dislike for us brought both relief and a surge of anger towards my sister. Susan revealed that my sister wouldn't be returning until tomorrow, so we decided to take Susan and the baby into our home for the night. As Susan engaged in normal conversation with us, albeit a bit awkwardly, I couldn't help but feel anger at my sister's neglectful actions, leaving Susan hungry and alone at times. After ensuring Susan and the baby had their fill and had gone to sleep, I called my parents to plan the next steps. The following day, with Susan and the baby, we headed to my sister's house. My parents were already there, and my mother rushed to hug Susan and the baby, expressing sympathy for what they had been through. As Susan quietly cried in my mother's embrace, we decided to wait for my sister to return. Leaving Susan with my mother, I went around the neighborhood to inquire about my sister's conduct. Neighbors were outraged when I mentioned my sister's neglect of Susan and the baby, sharing details about her usual cold behavior, often yelling at Susan loudly. Learning that my sister was expected to return home in the afternoon, my parents and I waited for her. I had already called her cell phone, informing her that we had taken Susan in for the night and were waiting at her house. As expected, my sister did not respond to my attempts at contacting her. Without regard for her, my parents and I awaited her return in front of her house. Eventually, she arrived with a few of her friends, scowling at the sight of us. "Huh? Why are you here? And Mom and Dad too. What do you want?" My sister immediately showed her displeasure. Undeterred, I glared back at her and explained the situation. "Last night, we found Susan walking with the baby, so we took them in. I tried contacting you several times, but you never noticed. Besides me, the police and our parents should have also left numerous calls about this incident." Pointing out these facts seemed to catch my sister off guard. Frantically checking her phone, she realized the seriousness of the situation. The color drained from her face as she saw the missed calls from the police. "I have something I need to do after this, so I'll be." "Wait a minute. Where do you think you're going?" My dad grabbed my sister by the scruff of her neck as she tried to flee. Momentarily struggling and thrashing, my sister soon gave up, hanging her head in resignation. Our parents had always been strict about manners and etiquette, instilling in us the importance of upholding such values. Grateful for their guidance, I acknowledged their role in our upbringing. However, my sister never embraced these principles, always finding a way to escape from our parents' expectations. It seemed she harbored an unease or discomfort around our father, perhaps due to his seemingly more severe behavior towards her. In front of her friends, our parents didn't hold back. They vehemently reproached her over her recent misdeeds, and in their time, the mistreatment of her children. They questioned her actions, expressing disbelief at how she could leave a 9-year-old and an infant alone to go on a vacation. "How could you even think about leaving a 9-year-old and an infant alone to go on a vacation? Even if Susan is reliable, she's still a child. Tasking her with the absolute care of an infant is inexcusable. Call yourself a mother. And this isn't a one-off thing. You've been making Susan stay at home by herself frequently. On top of not preparing any meals for her, do you even have any sense of being a parent?" With my sister's past attitude aired out, her friends looked bewildered. "Wait, didn't you say you left your daughters with your family?" The gravity of her actions became evident and our parents continued to address her irresponsible behavior. The presence of our infuriated parents, combined with my mournful expression and Susan discreetly eyeballing from behind us, painted a bitter picture. The whole entourage seemed to cast scorns at my sister, making it clear that what my parents were reprimanding her for was indeed the sardonic truth. My sister, unable to bear the pressure, continued making excuses, shaking and pale. "No, that's not it. I was told my husband would be at home yesterday," she stammered, resorting to lies. "How do you plan to explain everything up to now?" I interjected. However, before we could delve further, the local constabulary approached us, stating there were allegations of neglect concerning the children the night before. They requested a further discussion at the police station. My sister, unable to muster any form of fortification, was escorted away to the police station. During her interrogation, which was her first administrative disquisition of such kind, she was given a grave censure. Ultimately, she was released, with my brother-in-law stepping forward as her claimant. He had hurried back from his business trip upon being informed by my parents. Later that evening, my sister and her husband made their disgruntled entrance. Susan rushed to her father with joy, welcoming him back, and he apologized for making her feel lonely. After putting Susan and the baby to bed, we had a serious discussion. When my brother-in-law demanded my sister explain everything, she looked down with a pale face and made an excuse about needing a change of scenery due to parental burnout. Even so, convinced she was lying, I brought up information I had heard from my coworkers, recounting not only this incident but also other times my sister had acted irresponsibly. My brother-in-law became furious upon hearing this. A quick search around the house revealed a hoard of high-end items hidden in my sister's exclusive closet. Confronted with the proof, my sister reluctantly admitted to her misdeeds. She confessed to lying to her husband about their children wanting to take expensive classes and receiving money for it. Moreover, she admitted to often neglecting the children's care, not just when she was out, but also when she was home. Disappointed in having lost all patience, her husband declared, "I'm disappointed in you. You always said you were handling the housework and the kids properly. Let's get a divorce." Despite everything, my sister quietly accepted the divorce. With no excuses left for her misconduct, my sister sought help from our parents, but they refused to get involved, having disowned her at the time of her divorce. Abandoned by everyone, she lived miserably in what once was a mansion she bragged about, now turned into a cluttered house. On the other hand, my brother-in-law had been trying to change his work style for the sake of the family. He had submitted a request to transfer to a department without business trips, seeking more time with his family. His request was soon to be granted, and he decided to take custody of the children. Our parents wholeheartedly agreed with this decision. Susan, delighted to be living with her dad, expressed her joy, saying, "I get to live with Daddy." My sister, with no one on her side, hung her head in defeat. After the divorce, my brother-in-law and Susan moved close to my house to make up for the lack of interaction. My husband and I occasionally played with Susan and her sibling. Since the incident, Susan had grown attached to us, so we often took care of her and the baby when my brother-in-law's work ran late. The baby was growing up healthy and at a cute stage, and we spent our days watching the children grow, living our lives filled with happiness.